Pickaxe.
Hello and welcome back to the Review of Death, your fortnightly home for Doctor Who news and reviews. I am Matthew Toffolo. I am joined as ever by Billy Garrett-John. Say hello, Billy.
Hello, everybody. Hope we're all doing well wherever we are in the world, mentally. I never know what to say
Physically.
in these bits. Physically. Hello, everybody.
Our mental health is going to fall to pieces in a minute because we're going to be talking about
It's going to
time
nosedive,
flight.
Matt. It's going to nosedive and it's going to crash into the side of a mountain.
Like Concorde ending up in the Jurassic era.
Exactly. Like Time Flight is an episode we have wanted to do for a really long time.
You say we've wanted to do it. I mean,
more in a kind of, Khalid is a bit of a meme in the Review of Death canon, and we've always talked about Khalid and what an excellent villain he is.
Yeah.
Almost got through that without laughing. But we'll get on to it. We have some news to discuss first. By the time this comes...
I got a Voc robot head. You can't see it on your camera, but people at home can see it.
I knew
it's a bit dark in
would
this
be
room,
on display.
He's over there. I'll bring him in. So.
Do you want to shout out the very clever people who are responsible for putting it together?
I do. It is. Can I quickly go to my Twitter so I can give them proper credit because they deserve it for doing such an amazing job.
Give them a massive shout out, fam.
Thanks to Marley and Amelia Howard. So that's Marley at... Oh, God, I don't know how to pronounce it. So it's at Faeleryn. That's the terrible Faeleryn. And then for Amelia Howard, it's at AMH Makes, which makes sense. So there you are. Follow them. They do amazing stuff like this beautiful robot head. They do great stuff like Silurians and Cybermen heads and lots of other cool things that they're going to be working on in the future that I will probably end up buying because I'm mad for that sort of stuff.
It is beautiful. When you sent me the photos of it being made, it was like, whoa, it's a design sort of masterpiece, isn't it, the way it's put together?
Yeah, it's insane. It's so cool. We've got it in the front room at the moment, sort of perched between the Target books, and it just looks... lovely. It looks like you've got like a proper piece of art on display. It doesn't look like a Doctor Who thing. It looks like some Art Deco sort of sculpture. So you can sort of get away with it being a Doctor Who thing.
Yeah, it's got enough of a design element to it that people could walk past it and think, oh, it's just some kind of fancy schmancy thing until they pull the Velcro bit off at the back. And you go, it's actually
that's right.
It's to wear around the house and be menaced by while you're cooking spaghetti. And all that sort of stuff.
My nephews haven't come here yet, and they haven't seen it, so they've yet to see me. They might be in trouble with it on like that.
Looks good.
It's good, isn't it? Should I just do a podcast like this? I don't know how well this is going to sound.
I don't know. Would that get more or less engagement because we can't see your face?
Who knows? I want to say less. Hopefully,
I'd hope.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
I'd be quite put out if people in the comments say, "Oh no, keep it on."
Could be like a GIMP mask. I don't know. So every now and again, I try and keep in touch with what's going on locally, news in my local area. Like is that bridge that I live near going to open again? All that sort of stuff.
Hot girls in my local area.
That's what
you're after.
Yeah, hot milfs
Single
in your
mums
local area.
in my local area.
Exactly. And other bits like Bristol Live, crime. How many of these people did I go to school with? All that sort of stuff. And one of the things that I like looking at is the headlines on Bristol Live because it's all sensationalist rubbish. But have you heard that the Somerset Gimp has been arrested, or at least been put into? He's in court.
Wow, really? My God!
For people who don't know,
I was expecting you to talk about. I was expecting this to link back to Doctor Who. So the art exhibition that's going on in Weston-super-Mare. But no, it's all about the GIMP.
Yeah, I just think, we're talking about masks, and for some reason that's where my mind went. That probably says a lot about me. But the Somerset GIMP has had a public order put on him to not, it's specific, like, not to don an outfit and wriggle on the ground in a public area. It's like, fucking hell. So Google Somerset GIMP if you guys want a bit of a laugh. Although it is a bit threatening, so maybe not. Maybe it's not something worth laughing at. I don't know. But yeah, so there's that exhibition happening in Weston, but it seems like with all of the additions that you've got to the house that you should bloody open your own thing up.
Yeah, maybe we should. Let us know in the comments if you think that we should turn the house into a museum. Do you want to come round
to my house and have a look at my Doctor Who things? That's not terrifying.
To get in.
So yeah, there's this Weston-super-Mare Doctor Who exhibition. If you guys haven't been to Weston-super-Mare before,
there's no other reason to go.
No, I mean, the pier's nice, but once you've gone to the pier, then you've seen it, And the Winter Gardens are nice. If there's something going on at the Winter Gardens, that's quite a pretty place. In fact, we went to a Doctor Who convention at the Winter Gardens.
Yes,
but we didn't know that we were there at the time.
Yeah, we didn't know each other.
Yeah, we didn't know each other. Saying we didn't know we were there at the time sounds like we were fucking spiced out of our minds or something, just wandering around getting autographs from people.
We didn't even know we were at this convention. We had no recollection. That would be terrifying, though.
Imagine tripping out at a Doctor Who convention or an exhibition and being surrounded by all these monsters and costumes and stuff. You'd freak the hell out.
That would be the worst. Yeah, I remember there was a guy dressed as an ogron running around. Imagine seeing that. Oh, you'd go bonkers.
I've got a photo of me with the ogron, and I look very, very strained and pained to be in this situation. He was like going around and like pretending to throttle people. To be honest, to like put your hands on a kid at a convention now is like a big no-no, obviously.
Yeah.
Whether or not you're dressed up as an ogron. I can't imagine them getting away with anything like that these days. But yeah, so there's this convention in Weston-super-Mare, and it's like Doctor Who art through the years, like Target books and VHS covers. Is that right? That sort of thing?
Yeah, Target books, VHS covers, Virgin New Adventures, Missing Adventures, I guess.
Cool.
All the good stuff, all the good old nonsense, and I think stuff from the new series as well, and probably like production art and stuff.
All the good stuff and some stuff in the new series.
As I said it, I was like, "Oh, that sounds like I'm saying."
You can tell that you've been living back at home with Johnny for a prolonged period of time when you start talking like that. Speaking of Johnny, and just a quick plug for the Patreon before we get into the news. Johnny's going to be joining us on the Patreon in a couple of weeks. So we're going to do a commentary of bidding adieu so he can just let off on the Sylve costume. But that's fun. I'm looking forward to that because I've never seen it before. I've got no idea what it's like.
I saw it donkeys years ago, in the infancy of YouTube. So I've not seen it for a long time, so I'm looking forward to that as well.
That'll be fun. And we're also next week we're going to be reviewing Two's Company, the 4th installment in Once and Future, the big finish 60th anniversary range. And last week we did a commentary of Matt's action figure adventures, the 10 Doctors story adventure special celebration, which was lots of fun. And there's a bit of soul searching in there, which I found very funny. There's quite a depressing bit at the end. But it was great fun to record, and I love editing those as well. Like, it's trying to, because you were basically trying to talk over your adolescent voice for most of it. I think.
I was. I was like, this is really cringe. So the more I say, the less of this I have to hear.
But you don't edit it, so I've done a very labour-intensive job of snipping all of the bits where we're talking and moving them around enough and cutting some bits to allow the story to actually unfold, Matthew, because I wasn't able to get enough of a grip on the narrative with you. Saying, "Oh, that's bollocks, that's shit. Well done. There's a shadow. Blah, 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 blah. This thing's been knocked over. You idiot." Da, 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 da. It was great. So everybody who likes Matt's old action figure adventures should definitely check that out. That was really good fun.
Oh, yeah, it was good fun.
So some news. The Edinburgh TV Festival happened, I think, as of this going out a week ago, almost exactly a week ago. And there was some interesting stuff said by BBC Chief Content Officer Charlotte Moore. Just to kind of give a bit more context, I guess, into how this relationship with Disney Plus is working. It's obviously a lot of producer telespeak, so we're not getting the full picture. But Charlotte Moore said, the anniversary will be a massive event moment for the BBC. Russell is at the heart of the show, but like any good co-production partner, obviously, you work in a great partnership creatively. But absolutely, the BBC owns the IP for that show and drives the creative. We've got a great working relationship with Disney Plus. Having that kind of co-production deal at the moment is a fantastic thing for Doctor Who. Audience expectation, young people wanting to feel it is the big global show is incredibly exciting. It makes the whole thing incredibly ambitious and creative and really exciting. So a lot of waffly producer speak, but it does confirm that the BBC are in the driving seat when it comes to the creative vision for the show, and that it's a partnership in so much as Disney might pitch in with some stuff, but they are letting the BBC kind of take the reins, and Russell is the creative force in the program, which I don't know if it's too much of a surprise, but it's nice to get like a confirmation, I suppose.
Yeah, because I think sometimes we see a lot of people on Twitter sort of, moaning about Disney and saying, I bet Disney are doing this, that, and the other. So it's good to, like I said, know that that really isn't the case, and that, Doctor Who is just able to do what it always does. So that's good. Yeah,
I remember Russell mentioning in DWM that he had sent a script to Disney and they asked him to change the introduction and then suddenly, or at least do something different with the intro.
Yeah.
And he was like, of course, that's a great idea. I think people took that to mean that Disney are leaning on the creative of the show very heavily. And, I don't think that was ever going to be the case. That might change in future seasons if they don't really like the reaction to the show that it's getting. And they're like, right, well, we've got another X number of seasons left to go on this deal. We need to have a bit more of a hands-on approach to this. Then that might change. But it's good
or the
to
reverse. If it's
True.
very successful, then they might be like, oh well, we've got a hit on our hands here, so we want to stick our noses in and do more of this, or what works.
Totally.
Who knows?
And Lindsay Salt, head of drama commissioning, said of Disney, they're hugely respectful to the BBC. They're respectful of the brand that has lasted 60 years. But yeah, good to know that the BBC are treating it as a big event because, the last time the BBC said that the Doctor Who was going to be a big event moment, it was the centenary special, and they didn't really promote it or talk about it at all. Since Jodie Whittaker has left, she's been utterly erased from the promotion of the programme, besides lineups of the Doctors for calendar sets and stuff like that. I've seen a lot of people talking about that on Twitter. How do you feel about the way that Jodie's being sort of erased from Doctor Who, to quote Stephen Moffat? Because I don't really know if that's the case, but I do see some people's arguments with David Tennant's regeneration. Oh, I say David Tennant's regeneration. The 13th Doctor regenerating, winning that audience award at the Edinburgh TV Festival. I do get why people are a bit frustrated about that.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really sort of think about it, to be honest, until people started criticizing it on Twitter. I hadn't really given it much thought. I mean, at the end of the day, with a regeneration, the people that come in to watch those, because there's always usually a spike in the viewing figures at that moment, people just come in to see the changeover because they're fascinated to see how one actor becomes another actor, and the narrative of that. So really, at the end of the day, I don't think it's necessarily a problem that they didn't focus so much on Jodie Whittaker, because people wanted to see David Tennant come back. I don't know. I mean, I don't necessarily think it's an issue that we're not seeing much promotion about Jodie Whittaker in the series anyway, because that's recent memory, good or bad memories, depending on, what your personal taste is. And let's focus on what's coming out in the future.
Yeah.
It makes sense for them to call back to all the Series 4 stuff, because these guys are going to be appearing on your screen again in a couple of months' time. And, you want the people who are going to be on Twitter who may not be watching Doctor Who anymore to see that and go, oh, yeah, that was a really good story. Or I might actually go back to iPlayer and watch those episodes if they're coming back later on. So it all makes sense, You don't want to be going back to some of the Jodie Whittaker stories and thinking, oh, God, this is why I stopped watching this program. I'm not going to watch it in November. You want to go back to the stuff when it was super hyper popular because that's what they're trying to cash in on.
I think that also ties into a lot of criticism I see on Twitter of the way that they're promoting the specials now, where, we haven't had a trailer, we haven't really had any more footage. We get the odd sort of like that photo of David stopping the car from the filming in Bristol. We got that new promo picture the other day. But I saw somebody saying, they're basically just reposting screenshots from the trailer again and again and again and again, and like being like, hey, remember when the trailer came out? That was good. Keep an eye open for some more stuff. And like Doctor Who fans know when these are coming out, roughly speaking. Obviously, we don't have an air date yet, but you're a captive audience. So when you say just then, like, they're there to remind the casual audience that might have slipped out of Doctor Who that David Tennant's back and Series 4 was good, wasn't it? And you watched it then when you were a kid and blah, blah, blah. When Doctor Who's coming out, Doctor Who fans, this sort of promotion is not for you.
So, and I mean, compare it to like Power of the Doctor. Like, I don't think we even knew the title to like about a fortnight before it aired.
No, and I don't think we had a trailer until like maybe, was it like a fortnight or maybe even less than a fortnight before?
Something like that, yeah.
Or the air date we didn't know, or something mad like that.
Yeah.
It's all doom and gloom. It's not all doom and gloom. It's, it's another day on Twitter. Series 14, speaking of broadcast dates, is being slated for a spring broadcast, with the BBC referring to it as Series 14 for the first time in a press release. And naming the previously touted festive special as a Christmas one for the first time. Which is really good to hear. Speaking of, have you heard the rumour of who's going to be appearing in the Christmas special, Matthew?
I have. They've been in it before.
They have been in it before. I'd completely forgotten about it until it popped up. You're live on BBC One. Please do not say fuck or bugger. Davina McCall is rumoured to be appearing in the Christmas episode, which introduces Ncuti Gatwa and Millie Gibson. So, does Millie apply to be on a reality show? Who knows? But an interesting bit of casting. It'll be interesting to see how that ties in, and especially, this is no shade on Davina McCall whatsoever, because I think she's a great presenter and a great broadcaster. But this is a very 2005, 2006 bit of stunt casting, isn't it?
It really is. I mean, there may or may not have been a synopsis that leaked for the Christmas special a little while ago that rumoured that Davina McCall was going to be in it. So whether or not this is true, or whether or not the papers have just picked up on this rumour, that remains to be seen. But upon reading it and seeing her name attached, I was like, this does feel like 2005 Doctor Who Christmas special. Whether that is a good or a bad thing remains to be seen. I shall not speak on it further because it's all rumours and stuff.
Exactly.
But,
and I
it could be nonsense.
I had the rumoured title in this document as well, for example. We're not going to say it because it's all still speculation at this point, and we don't want to add to unsubstantiated rumours. But here we are talking about Davina McCall being in Doctor Who. Who knows? It might be one of those like revelations of like, oh, she can really act. Who knew that she had this in her wheelhouse? It's one of those castings where you're like, only Russell would know that she was going to be that good or whatever, and I've got to get her in it, got to get her involved or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So, let's see how that unfolds. But an interesting bit of speculation and rumour. Series 1 to 4 is being remastered for Blu-ray, and by extension, you'd imagine Disney Plus as well. But these are upscales. And they include existing bonus features, as well as a specially shot extra called A Look Back Through Time and Space, featuring Russell and David Tennant. Are you going to get these, Matt?
No.
No. Okay.
No, I'm waiting for the collection sets. Damn it.
You're going to have to wait another like 15, 20 years for those.
I mean, this was it. As soon as Russell came in, running the show again, that was off the cards. Those collection sets, if that was ever,
well, that's fine. Actually, think about it. Just start with series 5 through to 13.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's true.
There's no reason why we have to start at Russell.
Yeah.
And there's plenty of behind the scenes stuff to get into with series 5 to 13. So
well, yeah, but obviously they're really good mates. So maybe Russell would be very hands on with that and be like, "Oh no, you can't say anything."
Well, I suppose it depends what Russell's relationship with the show is like past these 2 years that we like. You know, as far as we're aware, Russell is doing the next 2 years worth of Doctor Who up to series 15. And we don't know much else beyond that. So it could be that he takes up that kind of Kevin Feige position that we've spoken about before, in which case that might not be good for new series collection sets. But, we'll get the stories in any case. But yes, I'm probably not going to pick these up. I'll wait for them to appear on Disney+.
Yeah. I mean, this is it. I mean, it's basically Russell and David Tennant doing... the Tom Baker years, but with the two of them. In which case, I give the BBC full access to the Doctor Who Latin theme.
Which has just been totally co-opted by you. I love that.
Yeah. Wouldn't it be amazing if it opened with that and those two? Hello. I was Doctor Who showrunner from 2005.
Hasn't Rob Ritchie done like an edit of like the Matt Smith years or the Jodie Whittaker years on? Yeah,
I think he did. Yeah.
Also, they hello Rob Ritchie, please can you ship one of your humobiles to New Zealand?
I know.
I would love to take receipt of one of those.
Very cool.
So yeah,
he posted an unboxing video with the Latin music over the top, and when I was watching it, I was like, this feels so weird. I was just waiting for myself to be like, go, hello. And welcome to the Doctor Who action figure review. Today we're looking at the Dappled Humorbill.
The replies underneath were all like, "What? This is Batman March's theme. Like, what's going on?
What are you doing?"
Season 20, the collection, scheduled for release on the 18th of September, apparently.
Cool.
And the DWM 60th anniversary poll. So they've done something interesting now. They have compiled 37 episodes, 3 from each Doctor except McGann, obviously. And when you go onto the website, you have to vote for 5. You don't rank them. You don't put any kind of score next to them. You just pick 5. Now, I really struggled. I was really, really struggling. And I didn't think I would, but I was doing it and I thought, do I do this honestly or do I do it with an even spread? So at least everything sort of gets a chance. But then I thought, well, no, because if it's the DWM poll, I have to be honest and rank the ones that I think are the best. So it was a funny choice, the 37. I mean, kind of, there were a few there I wasn't expecting. Like the 2 Doctors, I think, was there for Colin.
Why? That was a weird one. But I mean, I guess he's not got, the broadest spectrum of stories to go from.
No,
so.
But, like Attack of the Cybermen is better than the 2 Doctors, I think.
I guess it's because it's got Pat in it, isn't it? I mean, I think 2 Doctors is probably a better written story, but it's a bit too long and possibly just not enough story for 3 45-minute episodes.
Right.
So I reckon it's probably the Pat angle, and obviously it's Robert Holmes. There's a lot of good elements in there, but it's not, like you said, it's not one of his better stories. Yeah, I don't know. It's difficult. I mean, there were some weird omissions on there, like Robots of Death. I thought that might be on there because it's such a good one. Deadly Assassin, that wasn't on there. I mean, I was quite surprised to see something like Silence in the Library in the top 3 for David Tennant. I didn't think it... I mean, it's good, but...
Well, it gives us some indication of like which stories have dropped out of favour. And I think... Yeah. I think maybe we'll get... I mean, if that is the case with omissions like Deadly Assassin and Robots of Death, we'll probably be quite shocked at where a lot of those stories are now placing when the full poll comes out, which I think is by the end of the year. I'm not sure exactly when.
No.
But this poll closes, I think,
Power of
on
the Doctor. Number one.
I know. But that's recency bias. That's the same as everybody getting angry at Day of the Doctor being number one before or whatever it was.
But what I found was interesting about her results. So you had Power of the Doctor, then you had Haunting of Villa Diodati, and then you had Fugitive of the Jadoon. What I found was interesting was that 2 of those 3 stories, the 13th Doctor is kind of playing second fiddle to the fact that there are other Doctors scattered in that story, and that those are the aspects that people really attach themselves to in their enjoyment of those stories. Is, Joe Martin gets revealed in this one, and that's such a big moment, and Joe Martin was such a good Doctor. And then for the Power of the Doctor, it's all the stuff like, Sacha Dhawan, or Colin Baker and Peter Davison and Paul McGann and Silver, they all turn up, and isn't it wonderful? And Tegan and all that sort of stuff.
That's the same, though, for the 5 Doctors being one of Peter's 3, or the 2 Doctors being one of Colin's 3. Like, what? It's
really weird.
The fan part of our brain is like, the Doctor must be good. Or, I mean, that's a very, derisory way of putting it, I suppose. But you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. Because when we literally sat down and did this afternoon, and we were looking at it, and we sort of said, we were like, well, the 5 Doctors isn't really a sort of 5th Doctor story, not in the same way as Caves of Androzani, because there's just too many other Doctors in it. You really want those anniversary specials almost to, be excluded from these sort of things.
Yeah, it's almost a bit unfair that they're part of the same lumping in, because I did vote for the 5 Doctors. That's one of my 5. So the 5 that I picked were Spearhead from Space, Genesis of the Daleks, Earthshock, the 5 Doctors, and Bad Wolf Parting of the Ways. Those were my 5.
Wow. So say that again. So it was
Spearhead from Space.
Right. Which I didn't think should be in the top 3 of John's stories.
I know. I took it as I got it. Obviously I would have done Curse of Peladon as one of my
of course.
John picks or whatever. But of the ones that were there, Spearhead from Space, Genesis of the Daleks, Earthshock, the 5 Doctors, and Bad Wolf Parting of the Ways. I just thought, of the ones that are there, which of those can I say, in my own opinion, to my own tastes, are the closest you can get to 10 out of 10 out of all of those on the list. And for me, those were the 5.
I mean, I agree, because I mean, there are a couple there that I was like I didn't vote for Earthshock. I was this close to voting for Earthshock, but it was just like, because so this is what I went with. So I went with Power of the Daleks, because as much as I love Genesis and as much as I love Remembrance, either of those could have gone on the list. Power of the Daleks, I think it's a great story. Tomb of the Cybermen has always been a favourite since I was a teeny tot, so I had to go for that. Pyramids of Mars, it's my favourite story of all time, so that had to go on there. And then I went for Caves of Androzani, because I think it's excellent. But then I was stuck, because I was like, well, do I go for Earthshock, because I love Earthshock? Do I go for Remembrance of the Daleks? And I was like, no, I've already got a Dalek one on there. And I thought, well, John is my second favourite Doctor, and I feel like John needs to be up there because he's got such a good run of stories. So I went for Inferno, because, it's a cracking story, and it has terrified me again since I was teeny tiny.
On you when you were little.
Yeah. So I thought, everybody loves it. That's why it's in the top 3 of John's stories.
It's like the only
stories.
6-7 parter that actually kind of works,
it really
because it's
works,
got the parallel Earth narrative. God, we'll do that at some point. Yeah, that'll be great.
We should do that, because I fancy rewatching that, actually. So that'll be good. So that was my top picks: Power of the Daleks, Tomb of the Cybermen, Inferno, Pyramids of Mars, The Caves of Androzani.
Interesting. So nothing gets past 85 on your list.
No, I mean, I was kind of tempted to put either Dalek or Bad Wolf Parting of the Ways. But my brother was sat with me, and I knew he'd just have a big bloody moan if I
God's sake.
for any of those. So I thought,
this is an abusive relationship, is what this is.
Sit with the golden oldest.
God's sake. Okay, well, there we go. So it'll be interesting to find out what you guys put as your top 5. So let us know in the comments down below, because it's an interesting way of doing it. I think it takes a bit of the sting out of having to give each one a score, because also that's fucking laborious. Well, I really have to say to DWM, I really like the way that they structured the poll for the 60th.
Yeah.
I think, releasing them doctor by doctor, not only the poll results, but also the voting, I thought was really good.
Yeah.
I really like this pick 5 thing. And it will be interesting to see the methodology when the full results are printed, to see how they actually broke it down. But this seems like, I guess it just takes the sting out of, it's the most Colin Baker friendly way of voting for your least favorite Doctor Who stories,
Yeah, very much so. Very, very democratic, isn't it?
Very democratic, and that's the way it should be. Right, let's pan this fucking shit episode of Doctor Who. So, from the 22nd to the 30th of March 1982, viewers across the United Kingdom were treated to Time Flight, written by Peter Grimwade.
Nice choice of words there, treated.
Directed by Ron Jones. And it wasn't much better in other kinds of media avenues at the time. Number 1 single in the charts, The Lion Sleeps Tonight by Tight Fit. Matt, take it away.
Wow. We are Mumblewee. I've just done this, and my Mac has just come up with playing music ? So clearly,
that's pretty good.
Clearly, So holy shit, AI thought I was doing a good job.
Damn, it goes to show how much work AI has to do still to become accurate. And UK number 1 in the box office for the whole of 1982, E.T., which obviously is fantastic. So,
brilliant.
Let's be fair to 1982.
Imagine going to see E.T. and then going, and when we get home, Doctor Who's on.
Well, this is it. I always think it's interesting to think what is in the cinema, what is blowing people's socks off visually, and then you come home and you see the fucking plasmavores or whatever they're called. It's let's get into
one of
it.
E.T.'s turds with legs.
The biggest thing I think we need to talk about at the top of this story, and it's something that generates a lot of discussion, and I think it's kind of the main interesting talking point from this story, is the opening scenes in the TARDIS. So obviously the previous story in this season was Earthshock, which saw the departure of Adric. And we open with, in the TARDIS anyway, we don't open the story with this, but we open in the TARDIS with Tegan, Nyssa, and the Fifth Doctor getting over the death of Adric. I will say at least they acknowledge it, because it's not like classic Who necessarily does that, because when next week is a completely different adventure and a completely different, we don't know how much time has elapsed between the adventures, but that is something that I do like about the Davison era, is that it is like one story into another. Usually the previous story ending with the TARDIS going sideways and everybody clinging to the console. They're always falling down a fucking time corridor like they're potholes. So, I do like the way that they do roll into one another. That's probably a real pain in the ass for Big Finish. But, what do you think of this whole opening exchange with Adric missing?
I mean, like you said, it's a good thing that they addressed it, because it needed addressing. I don't know. I think the problem with it is that they try to wrap it up in a nice, neat bow, in as much as they're like, oh yes, this is really sad, but come on, let's keep our chins up and let's go off to Crystal Palace or whatever.
At least we don't have to act with him anymore.
Oh well, except for you, Janet and Sarah, you've got the misfortune of the next episode.
It's all right. He's green screened. He's green screened. You don't have to actually talk to him in person. You don't have to make eye contact.
It's weird, because I think what would have been better, because obviously then they talk about going to bloody the Great Exhibition, and then they get caught in a time warp or whatever, and they're holding onto the console. What they should have done is been talking about Adric and all that sort of stuff, and then the TARDIS should have started going funny, and then it cuts them off, and then that way you can think, well, they started to address it. We don't have to spend masses of time on it, but we can assume that perhaps later on they have a deeper exchange about it. They don't get the time to really address it in the way that they need to. I think that would have been the better way of doing it. It just feels a bit laboured. I don't feel anyone is really convinced by what they're saying, and the grief isn't really there because none of the fucking actors could stand him, so they probably just thought, "Oh, this is the toughest acting I've got to do is pretend to be sad about this."
Christ Almighty, yeah. I think the trouble with it is, I think that is a great idea, is to have them cut off from their morning by the TARDIS, cocking up. I think the trouble with it is the way that, as you say, they try and wrap it up and put a bow around it. Is Peter's line? He wouldn't want us to mourn unnecessarily. And it's like, I don't think that their mourning is unnecessary, no. That is such a, well, he's dead, let's just fucking, we never liked him anyway. It's like, what part of you just taking stock of the fact that you just watched somebody that you were close with, even if you didn't necessarily like him, somebody that you were close with, burning up in the Earth's atmosphere, there's nothing unnecessary about taking stock of that situation. That's why you've all got, that's why all the Doctor's companions end up coming back to Earth and being really messed up, because the Doctor's like, oh, well, they're dead. Let's get on with it. And it's like, fuck.
Oh, well, he was a stowaway. I didn't really invite him on board, so serves him right.
He was always playing with his fucking abacus, and he was, well, what a wind-up. So either, as you say, just have them cut off by the Time Eddy thing, which is a great idea, or, have that implied sense that they have gone off and taken stock of what's gone on. They've had that conversation off screen, and then be like, oh, well, it was nice to have, these 2 weeks on, this lovely sunny planet to get over Adric's death, and the Doctor's there with a cocktail going, oh, yes, it was terrible, wasn't it, or whatever.
I don't really buy the whole thing of the Doctor being like, I can't go back to save him. I was like, oh, surely you could just nip the TARDIS to
he doesn't give a fuck about him. I've told you already, Matt. They hate him. They don't want anything to do with Adric. It's like, this is the one person that I'm not struggling to make an argument for breaking the laws of time to go back and save, And as you mentioned, he comes back. Adric is in I think it's part 3 or part 2. He comes into the story.
Part 2,
his Force ghost. Now,
if you come close, you will kill me, Nissa.
You will kill me, Nissa.
Probably the worst acting from him in his entire Doctor Who run.
And that is saying something.
And he looks so fucking pissed as well. If you watch the outtakes, he just looks so pissed off that he's there, because he's like, I've got to come in to do this after I've just been killed off. And I wasn't even consulted about being killed off. I didn't want to be killed off. And now I'm back here on green screen.
Watched Matthew Waterhouse's Mythmakers in the lead up to this.
We watched Weekend with Waterhouse, and he came out with some cracking bullshit at the start of that one.
The Mythmakers is lathered in bullshit. It's wonderful. But one of the things he says is, and I think part of this may be accurate. I mean, I don't know. Somebody out there can tell us whether or not this is true. So he seems to conflate the idea that his contract ran over into Time Flight with, I think, maybe saying that his contract was renewed just to do that one. But then in that case, why aren't you in part 1 anyway? But it was also a bit of a clever ploy on JNT's part, because it meant that he was credited in the Radio Times. Which
of course.
Then means that people aren't suspicious when his name suddenly isn't popping up in the credits. Which I think is a really clever idea. And he says that, Earthshock was probably the right time to leave because Time Flight ended up being a terrible story. So, yeah.
I mean, if I was Matthew Waterhouse, I'd be like, joke's on you. At least I'm not having to be in this for 4 weeks running. I get to do like 2 minutes and piss off home.
Yeah. Right. Have fun, everybody. I'm off down the pub. Fucking hell.
He said in the Weekend with Waterhouse, he said that during the Davison era, Adric is the most interesting thing on screen at any given time with that lot. And I think he also said something akin to, when he leaves, Nissa and Tegan aren't anywhere near as interesting without him.
Well, that's patently bullshit. I don't understand. I kind of get, because he does talk a bit about that stuff on this Mythmakers, where it's sort of like, I love that dynamic. You never really get a dynamic that sort of, I don't know how he puts it, but
You've got a companion on the TARDIS that everybody hates.
That nobody wants there, yeah. But that whole era, for me, is sort of coloured by the fact that nobody appears to want to be there apart from Nyssa. And Nyssa, I'm not a massive fan. I find her quite boring. She's, as soon as
which
her
is a
dad's
shame because
dead,
she should be the most interesting because
precisely.
the Doctor's best mate / enemy murdered her dad, and that's
looks
a whole
like her dad. Yeah,
looks like her dad. Yeah,
it's crazy. So, but it's only interesting when the Master turns up, but then it's never really mentioned. So. Right, well, we'll get on to the Master in a minute because apparently he pops up. That was a surprise to me watching this, Matt. I don't know about you, but apparently the Master's in this. So who is to blame for Time Flight? Well, it's Peter Grimwade, who directed Full Circle, Logopolis, Kinder, and Earthshock, the previous story, which was his last.
Director.
Great superb director. But Earthshock was his last directing job on Doctor Who. He was apparently slated to direct Resurrection of the Daleks, but because of delays brought on by industrial action, it got kind of kicked down the road. And then it ends up in season 21. But the reason he didn't direct it in season 21 is because when the strikes were happening and the delays and whatnot, he's like, well, I'll take everybody out to dinner and we'll have a nice slap-up meal and we'll sort of, kind of lick our wounds a bit that this isn't happening, blah, blah, blah. But didn't invite JNT, who he intended to take out separately for supper or whatever. And JNT was very pissed off by it and felt slighted by it and said, well, you're not fucking directing Resurrection of the Daleks then, and gave it to Matthew Robinson.
Shit.
Oh, my God.
There's a minefield in the production office back then. Holy shit.
Yeah, in many different respects, for many different reasons.
Yeah. Wow.
He wrote Time Fight. He wrote Mordrin Undead. And he also partially wrote Planet of Fire, but because he was being messed around with, are we going to Lanzarote? You're not going to Lanzarote. He just said, fuck it, and basically gave it to Eric Saywood to finish off.
Wow. Shit because of both of them.
Yeah, precisely. So we can blame both of them for that. I think we can also probably blame Eric Saywood for this as well, because this script is so half-baked.
Yeah.
What it needed was a script editor who gave a shit. And what it also needed was a cast who gave a shit. Yeah. And it needed a broadcaster to make it that actually wanted to put money in it to make it not look shit.
Nothing.
And
you needed a director that this wasn't their second job.
I know, right, precisely. I mean, there isn't just one issue with this story. It's like everything... nothing works. Everything is working against it. Everybody in it looks like they realize what they're in and what's going on.
Yeah.
The direction is really flat. And when you're shooting an exterior location in a studio, you can't just have these fucking wide shots where you can see the fact that it's as flat as it is. I know you can put some grass down and stuff, but fucking hell. And then you think, do you think it was worth going out and shooting at Heathrow Airport rather than doing all that interior stuff in the studio where you would have been able to replicate it pretty well, I'm sure, and pretty cheaply, and then going out and shooting the exterior stuff on prehistoric Earth or Jurassic Earth
in some bloody quarry? Yeah, it is. Yeah, the whole thing is ass about tit, and I mean, like episode 1, I think is fine. I don't think there's really any issue with episode 1, and I think. Obviously, now with the benefit of the Blu-ray sets, the collection sets, all of the stuff at Heathrow, all of the stuff on Concorde looks phenomenal because it looks lovely. We have the film, existing film, so it looks amazing. But it's right at the end of that episode where things start to go wrong, and the first segment is when they get off the plane. And they've got that awful green screen shot of them outside Heathrow. Yeah. Now, obviously, what had happened there was they'd gone, right, we'll do it on green screen. We'll put Heathrow behind them, and then we'll dissolve it into the studio set of Jurassic Earth. Well, obviously, that didn't work. So then they do a fade to white, and then an explosion, and then they're all crouched down on the Jurassic World set. Not to be confused with the film Jurassic World. So that looks shit immediately, and you just think, well, you were there on the bloody runway. Why didn't you just shoot it on location? So that looks naff. And then, of course, the Jurassic World set looks absolute arse. I mean, I watched the behind the scenes, and the designer, bless him, Richard McMahon Smith, he talked in depth about, what he wanted to do, what he was trying to achieve, how he tried to make it work. And yeah, on paper, it really sounds like it's going to work. You've got the pyramid that is Khalid's temple or whatever. That's there on the set in the background. That's never really shot in isolation very often. Ron Jones doesn't have a very good eye for establishing shots to get a real sense of where things are.
Like where's everybody going? What's the point in all this?
Yeah, it's really weird. And, there's that bit in the same episode where they find the remains of the Xeraphim spaceship. And it's like shot through a few girders and a bit of wire. And they're like, oh, yeah, this crashed spaceship. If you looked away from the screen for 2 seconds and looked back, you would have missed that entire thing.
Precisely.
And then later on, when they talk about it, you'd be like, what? What crashed spaceship? I thought you just landed bloody... I mean, obviously, how the hell does Concorde land?
And take
I'm
off.
getting angry now. And take off in that, environment because it's so bloody rocky. But how do they get off the plane? Because the plane lands and they've got the stairs to walk off the plane. Well, that's not Heathrow. They're just it's just in the fucking desert in Jurassic Earth. So what happens? They open the door, they all fall out, break their legs.
That is such a good point. I had never thought of that. Of course, because those steps don't descend out of the plane.
Yeah.
Like,
it's
somebody
ridiculous.
has to wheel them up to it.
Yeah. And how do they get back on?
Oh my God. I hadn't thought of that. Wow. Shit.
So
that's
the
such a
story
good
falls
point.
apart there.
Well, no,
We haven't got
obviously
Khalid.
nobody was thinking enough about this story to begin with. Like, let's start at the beginning and work through, right? Because that might unlock some of the problems that are here. So immediately, you've got the TARDIS stuck in whatever it was, a time eddy, a time corridor, a time contour. Sorry,
contour, yeah,
and ends up at Heathrow Airport. They mentioned of Bristol, Concorde flying over the Bristol Channel. And of course,
really cool.
Concorde was built in Bristol at Filton Airport.
Yeah.
Have you ever been to see Concorde?
No, I haven't. And it's literally up the road from where I live now. I should go.
It's really cool.
Yeah.
I looked it up. It's not the same Concorde that's in Doctor Who. It's a different model.
No.
Annoyingly. Yeah. Do you remember Concorde flying over Bristol and doing its farewell thing?
Vaguely.
Yeah.
Not... Yeah.
They kicked us out of lessons at school and told us to go into the playground, and it literally came right over the school and over towards the suspension bridge. It was gorgeous. It was such a sight.
Oh, nice
to see it. But yeah, nice to have Concorde included. I think I'll get onto that.
Yeah. There's a nice character moment for Peter Davison, which I wish they did more of later on, where he goes out and checks the cricket scores. At that point, the cricket thing is such a big part of his character, and they sort of forget it later on. And I like that. And he's like, that's what you want from his Doctor, because I mean, obviously his Doctor's a bit boring.
Yeah, there's nothing else to him. But then also, it's annoying that like his only character quirk is embedded in his costume. Like, it's so obvious.
Yeah,
like we get it. You like cricket. Look at you. So it's weird when it's not mentioned, because then his costume feels like completely pointless. But then when he does mention it, it's like, okay, so the only thing you've got is cricket and being short of breath. Like, that's your thing. Yeah. So the TARDIS gets picked up by air traffic control as the first Concorde disappears into this time contour. Air traffic control at Heathrow was apparently just two blokes in a very dark room as well. Fucking Christ. And when the Doctor gets to Heathrow, he convinces British Airways to sacrifice another Concorde to test this time contour theory. Say what you will about JNT and his stunt casting, but it says a lot that this man was able to take an inanimate object and make it stunt casting. With Concorde featuring in it. What do you think of Concorde and BA? Because to me, it does feel like an extended bit of product placement.
Yeah, it is weird. It is a bit odd, and yeah, especially like when you see like the air hostess walking around, and she's in the full BA gear, and it's like obviously I get that they have to be there, but it does feel a bit odd. You nowadays, if they were to do this story now, they'd come up with their own airline.
Right.
I guess they wouldn't even be allowed to use British Airways. So it does feel a bit odd, but I kind of like the way that now we're so used to Doctor Who attaching itself to things that are current and setting itself in the present day. That must have felt quite novel, I guess, for
True.
Doctor Who at that point, because you don't really get a lot of that during not only during the early 80s, but in the late 70s with Tom. So much of his story, so many of his stories are, not even in the Earth in the past. It's all on different planets and stuff. So for suddenly to be like, oh, Heathrow, kids are at home thinking, oh, I caught a flight there on the holidays.
Totally. It does make Doctor Who feel a bit more real, and at the time, obviously, it does make it feel very, very current. The only reason I bring up product placement is, the BBC is an institution in the same way that British Airways, they're kind of viewed in the same packet as like they're basically a civil service, because of their position. But BA were apparently, they were given first look at the script, and they requested that flight attendant not refer to the passengers as punters, because that's obviously not BA enough. And also the names of the crew on Concorde had to be changed because they were the same as active members of BA's flight crew at the time. So all those characters had to change. So it's interesting that they were like, you get first refusal on whether or not you think this stuff is representative of your brand, and you just think, the BBC wouldn't do that now. It wouldn't give that sort of preferential treatment to anyone. It has to, even if you had like a factual entertainment show like The Airport or whatever, where they're following crews around, they would present it as is. They wouldn't sweeten it because this massive company needed to change their image or come across a certain way. It's very interesting. And
I love how all of this came about because JNT and Peter Grimwade hoped that they would get free flights on Concorde because of this, or whatever, or at least free British Airways flights. I'd like to think that they went to the airport one time and were like, we did a Doctor Who called Time Flight with you guys. And someone looked it up and was like, yeah, you're banned from any British Airways flight.
Oh my word. Can you imagine? Yeah, it's cattle class for you, mate. Get in the back. You don't deserve the free complimentary champagne. I do like the Doctor's line, this thing is smaller on the inside than it is on the outside, because if you do go to, is it called Aerospace? I think that's where they hold Concorde in Bristol at the minute. If you ever do go and see it, it is like that. It is like, this is a huge bloody ship, but you get in, it's so cramped. It's like walking through like a castle in Wales and thinking everybody was fucking short back then. The doors are all like come up to your chin, and you think, wow, like it's tiny. It's really cramped, but I guess that's what makes it so fast. I don't know.
We'll have to go. Annie and I will go, and she'll probably any excuse to go
get
dress up as Doctor Who.
Exactly.
Yeah, go on. We'll do that. Yeah, I'll go as Khalid.
I was just about to say you need to go as Khalid, who we're coming on to in a second. So Concorde appears to land back at. Your face.
I know he's got green stuff coming out of his nostrils.
If it looks green, you need to get that checked out. Concorde appears to land back at Heathrow Airport, but it turns out there are 140 million years in the past, in the Jurassic period. No dinosaurs, obviously, because the budget won't stretch to that. And I think maybe they went, we did dinosaurs once and it didn't look very good, so let's try and avoid dinosaurs. But
Steven Spielberg had got all the dinosaur actors for a little project he was working on.
Yeah, don't tell anybody, but I'm doing a kind of a dinosaur thing after the ET bit, so maybe just... funny as well how we've gone from Adric crashing into Jurassic Earth, wiping out the dinosaurs, to then going to that same period. That does feel like something that a script editor would sort of pick up on, who actually cared, or would say, can we maybe place this 100 million years further forward or further back?
Yeah. Yeah. Because it doesn't really... It's not really necessary to the story that it's
not in the
then.
slightest. Otherwise, you'd have dinosaurs there.
Yeah, which obviously they know they can't afford to do. So
Exactly.
they're conspicuous by their absence. I do like the idea of Peter like walking through the wilderness, going, "Oh, careful! If you look up into the sky, we might see Jandrick coming in."
You see this fossilized, like in Pompeii where they get fossilized by the lava, but it's Adric going like that on the keyboard. So yeah, the budget doesn't stretch to realize this Jurassic scrubland in a TV studio. It looks awful. And again, you're like, just because JNT wanted free flights, was it really worth wasting the fucking location budget going to Heathrow Airport when you could have done it in a studio?
Could have done all this
That could have been on green screen. That bit at the end where Tegan walks up to the bloody board and sees the flight, listings, that could have been done in a studio. It didn't need to be done at, whatever.
No, it's crazy.
And
they've done it before with the faceless ones. They'd managed to make an airport.
Did they shoot at Heathrow, or did they just find like an airfield somewhere and make it look like?
No, that was at Gatwick, I think.
Right.
They did, and I think they did do some stuff inside Gatwick, but obviously the majority of the stuff in Gatwick is all done in the studio.
Yes, that does ring a bell. Actually, isn't there a bit where they're hiding from airport security with the newspapers and there's stuff on location with police officers going around looking for them? Is that?
That's right. Yeah. So, but it was like obviously a healthy mix of the two. So, like you said, they don't blow the budget because I think they needed to blow the budget on the next story. Precisely.
And I suppose, the Faceless Ones is different because the whole thing is set at the airport. But, I think they or again, you have a script editor that looks at it and goes, I don't think we can realise this if we're going to go on location. It's like that isn't thought about enough, No. So, yeah,
they all talk about it. They all talk about it in the making of. Peter and Janet and Sarah, they all say, we went onto that studio floor and just looked at it and were just so disappointed. They're like, oh my God, how is this going to work?
Apparently, Peter says that they knew in rehearsals that this wasn't going to work. And so the lead up to getting into the studio to do it, they must have been dreading it. And you can see it on their faces. Like, nobody looks like they want to be there. No one looks like they're enjoying it. Apart from the guest cast, the crew from the Concorde, the second Concorde, who I think are great, actually. I really like all of them.
Oh, yeah, they're great.
They're the only people that actually seem to be relishing the fact that they're in a Doctor Who. And everybody else is just like, God, right, let's get to next week's. Next week's might be better. Oh, it's the end of the series, isn't it?
Yeah.
So they're probably all thinking, fucking hell, we're going out on this. This is not a good omen for...
No.
But then Peter, I guess, is suddenly realising when you have good stories in the middle of a season, it means the last one usually suffers because there's no money left. So...
Yeah.
And that seems to be the case here. So why try and replicate the scrubland in the studio?
It happens in the next series as well. It happens in season 20, King's Demons is pretty lackluster.
It's only 2 episodes as well, isn't it?
It's only 2 episodes. And then it happens again in season 21. You get Caves of Androzani and then you get the Twin Dilemma.
Unbelievable. So, yeah, no money left. Spunked it all. And speaking of spunk, we meet the Plasmatons, who encased the Doctor in a spunk bubble. The actors couldn't see anything out of their costumes because the company that they'd hired to make them didn't factor in vision for the people wearing the outfits. God. So that's why they don't really move. That's why they just sort of shuffle forward a couple of inches and then stand there.
And they've got no arms, which also doesn't help. You sort of look at them and think, well, what are you going to do? And it looks like they're struggling to keep their balance because they've got no arms. They're like,
exactly.
Oh, shit.
And
if I step on a bit of polystyrene, I'm over.
They're monsters from an era of Doctor Who where you're like, it's not good enough for me anyway. Where you just go, they're a composite of pure energy and will. It's like, well, who would will something that looks like that into existence? Yeah, and also, that's not enough. That's almost the same sort of it's Omega's will that's made this solid. It's like, that's magic. That's not fucking science.
Yeah, well, this is it. This is what I've put into here. It's like this story shares, some elements with the 3 Doctors because you've got this barren landscape. The only thing that they face off against are these blobby monsters, albeit the gel guards look amazing I mean, they look great. I like the gel guards, but compared to the plasmatons, they look like fucking the best Doctor Who monster ever created.
Yeah.
And then of course you've got the mad king of his own little world in his temple.
There you go.
Doing his own little thing. So I reckon Peter Grimwade just really liked the Three Doctors and thought, I'll do that. I'll nick
it, but not do it well enough. Right, let's get on to it. We can't put it off any longer. Right, so here we go. Khalid, he's been a long-running joke throughout the Review of Death, so it's nice to finally get to talk about him. Lumba Lum. I mean, there's that whole bit at the start where we first see him and he's cooing over the TARDIS and gives it a little smooch, which I had forgotten. So when he did it, I just burst out laughing. And then there's his, Balor and Balumbalum, which begs the question, now that I've said it, is that a cancelable offence? Is Khalid is racist as fuck, right? Am I just misconstruing that?
Yeah, definitely. I was just about to do an impression of Khalid then, and I thought, actually, I better not do that because I might get cancelled by osmosis.
But like, what's so he's got the kind of long mustache thing.
He's got like Chinese mustache, because they're trying to go for the Oriental angle, as they would put it back then. But he's like a mystic from Arabia, because he talks about when I was in the deserts of Arabia. I was like, well, where are you from? People always moan about the talents of Weng Chiang, but they don't moan about this enough.
He's got Sutek levels of mental ability as well, like conjuring stuff, making people hallucinate these incredible, fantastical, exotic locations like the M4 motorway,
On that thing that he conjures up, the like glove puppet thing.
Oh,
that's
God.
crap. When you see the original sketch that the designer did, fair play to the designer. He had so many good ideas of what he wanted to do, and then obviously got over to the prop people, and they made it, and it just looked horseshit. It's such a shame.
Gutting. But he's just a front for the real baddie. There is, of course, no actor called Leon Nai Tai, or Tai, which is, anybody looking at that would have gone, oh, Anthony Ainley's in it this week. It's the Master. Why, if he's on his own at the end of this time contour, is he dressing up? Is he in this outfit?
I have no idea. And even in the making of, Eric Saywood says, "Oh, we probably should have realised that." I was like, "Well, your fucking job, you dick." That's clearly the most obvious thing. I don't know if that was like a JNT thing where he was like, "Well, the Master loves to dress up, so we've got to put him in a disguise." Yeah. So maybe that was who knows.
I do like
to be fair to Anthony Ainley, I think he does it really well.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, and I think he does it really well. And yeah, like you said, I'm glad that is now an aspect of the Master that came back, because it's such a big part of his character. Especially for those first couple of regenerations. So I think Anthony does a really good job in that part, as cancelable as it is. But yeah, it serves no purpose. It makes no sense. I mean, I said this the other night, and Annie said, well, he's psychotic, so just let him do what he wants to do.
He's off his rocker, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I mean, that's fair enough. If Sacha Dhawan's Master can start dancing to Rara Rasputin, why not,
True. I'd take that over Khalid, though. Big time.
Really? Oh, no.
Yeah.
I like the old Umbalumbalums. You don't see that Sacha Dhawan vomiting green gloop out of his mouth.
That's true. Maybe that'll pop up in his big finish. Maybe we'll get
and why does
Dhawan
that happen?
Master. Yeah. But yeah, because
is
then
the Master
it's like, it's not
being
like
sick, or is that some...
It's not like you have a chance to like cut away to another scene and you think, right, well, that's Khalid done for. Because it's like 20 seconds later, he pulls his mask off and stands up and is, haha, I'm the Master.
Yeah.
I've been the Master all along. It's like, what? And the disguise is even weirder when you consider the fact that Anthony Ainley is wearing a bald cap over his wig.
No, it's insane. It's nuts.
What is going on? I watched his Mythmakers. I did a lot of research for this.
You did? My God.
If only just to be like, what happened and what does everybody think of this?
I need to know.
I need to know what went wrong. It's a really interesting Mythmakers actually, because it wasn't shot with him. It's like convention footage. It's like an appearance he did at a convention in Sheffield, I think it was. And it's just after the release of the Destiny of the Doctors, but he refers to it as the CD-ROM. Have you all got out and bought the CD-ROM? Well, you should do, because it's not doing terribly well at the moment. And he's like, it's my favorite thing I've done. It's my favorite thing I've done as the Master in Doctor Who. He's obviously really, really proud of it, which he should be, because it's great. And he's amazing in it. But of Time Flight, he says, it's better than you say, it's better than you think. But I look at it from the other side. You're all so brainy and you work out the details, like the plot and so on. It's like, you must know. So let's talk about the Master's plan, because the Master usually has a plan. I'm not entirely sure what this one is, besides get the fuck out of this story and get into another adventure as quickly as humanly possible. So,
which is how it feels. That's how it ends as well. It doesn't end that way. He just buggers off.
And the Doctor is like, I will help you get out of Time Flight by giving you this piece of the TARDIS so that I can get the fuck out of here as well. So, Matt, tell us what. I mean, I'm not asking you to explain the plot, but what does why is the Master there? What does he want? What's his deal?
I don't know. It's something to do with the Xeraphim. The Xeraphim crash landed there, built a temple because their world was ravaged by radioactive whatever, and now they've become like a Gestalt thing in a altar, which you see for like 1 second. You see a brief shot of it. They make a point of it being alive, and again, Ron Jones doesn't direct it very well. So the Master goes there to try and take control of the Xeraphim, because if he puts that inside his TARDIS, which is buggered, I don't know why his TARDIS is buggered. Is it buggered because it went down? No. He's created the time contour, hasn't he?
Well, he's trapped in that period for whatever reason and has created the time contour as a link
to capture the Doctor.
To get out of there or whatever. I don't know if it's specifically the Doctor. I don't know. Because when he's there, he's like, oh, well, finally, I've got another TARDIS that I can like pilfer bits from. But
he needs the people on the plane to help break into the inner sanctum, so he can access the Xeraphim to put in his TARDIS. So he has like a super TARDIS. Yeah,
is really messy, because I didn't at all. Because again, I think it's the direction. I don't know if the design helps, but I think it's the direction that it's difficult to initially connect that sarcophagus altar set with what those old people are trying to break into, because that unless it is TARDISy and bigger on the inside than the outside, the interior and the exterior do not mesh at all. So I'm always, it's weird. And then also the fact that Nyssa and Tegan get into the temple by going through all these like cavernous corridors
and stuff,
then they pop up in the spaceship with the sarcophagus in it. But when you look at the set of the exterior of the ship, there is no way of them getting in there unless they come up through the floor. So
it's so weird.
Really
bizarre.
Badly plotted and badly put together.
Yeah. I mean, God, you get to part 4. I mean, I'm getting ahead of myself, but part 4 is the worst fucking thing, because it's just them stood on a set. You get it in part 3 as well. When they're in the altar set in part 3, and they're talking to the Xeraphim, Peter, Janet, and Sarah, they're all stood there, and you can see it on their faces. All 3 of them are like, I haven't got a shitting clue what is going on.
No.
Janet, particularly, because Janet's got nothing to do in that whole sequence. So she's just stood there. She looks like she's like, oh, God, what am I going to have for dinner when I get home?
She shot all the bits where she has to like worry about acting, because all the location stuff's been done where she's done her farewell. So she's just like fucking treading water until they can go home.
And then they've got that whole sequence where they're like, oh, we must join together to fight off the bad Xeraphim. don't get me started on that. That whole,
I know.
There are good Xeraphim and bad, the evil Xeraphim. It's so black and white, and so there's just no depth to it. It's just also, appallingly written.
We don't know this species anyway. The Xeraphim. They're so nebulous. You know, that even the fact that they are, the whole race is just embodied by this one ghostly thing. That's how fucking nebulous it is. And then they suggest that because of the Master's influence in trying to convince the Xeraphim to give him the power of their sarcophagus thing that they're all in, that they've got this split personality with a good Xeraphim and a bad Xeraphim. The only difference is their morph suits have slightly different sharpie lines on them, but you can see the fucking seam of their morph suit down the front of it. You know, it's like, no, you're not even trying.
I mean, this is I put in my notes, like the only way the Xeraphim could have been any worse is if they hadn't have shot them in the way that they shot them, because at least by shooting them on a blue screen and making them semi-transparent in all the shadowy parts, it makes them feel slightly more alien and weird, and, you know, they're like energy or whatever. Obviously, it doesn't detract from the fact that you can see the zip up the front of their suit. But can you imagine if it was just two blokes in fucking lycra stood there with papier-mâché grey heads?
It's always the way with these stories, and I've said it so many times that it's probably become quite boring, that the episodes that don't work are the ones where the villain or the central alien or whatever just doesn't fucking work, because there's no threat. So why should anybody care what's going on anyway? And then also the ones that you look at and you think, this is what people were pointing at on the 6th floor at Television Centre when they went, this show doesn't work anymore. This is an embarrassment to this corporation. Now, I understand that that's because the BBC aren't giving them enough money to do it, but they're looking at it thinking, well, they've got on long enough, you know, on this budget that, you know, surely they can do all right. We're giving them a big boost coming into the anniversary year and all that sort of stuff, so they'll get a bit more money. But you look at that thing on screen and you just go like, it's embarrassing, you know. And I was watching this on the big telly whilst I was actually working, and it was one of those classic things where you just go like, oh, don't walk into the room now while this is on. Please don't, you know. And Sarah Sutton is great, but her possessed acting gives me the ick, you know. I don't know, and
I think she's good. I think she does a good job. Bless her.
She's doing the best she can, you know, with what she's got in front of her. But it rubs me up the wrong way. I don't know. There's something about it. I'm just like, oh, stop. Oh, I don't like watching this. It's making me feel uneasy.
But it's just so, the whole thing just feels so airy-fairy, and it just feels like waffle, and none of them know what they're talking about, and they don't really try to hide it very much, because it's like 9:45, and he's like, we need to get this done, so let's just get on with it. And then episode 4 is the same. Episode 4 is the worst, because it's just the Master and the Doctor on that bloody set just stood. It's like a play. It's like a badly staged play where they're just right in front, facing each other, left and right like this, and it's just like, Doctor, you better give me the canobulizer from your TARDIS. Oh well, not if I give you my canobulizer, you'll give me my petubulizer. It's like, what the fuck are these people saying? Who gives a shit?
I think the technical term you're looking for, Matthew, is quantum accelerator.
Oh, sorry.
Temporal limiter. What a fucking fan you are. Jesus Christ, come on, you canobulator and your populator.
I think those are better.
They are better. You're right. It's that direction where it's like, there is such a thing. Yeah, it's like there is such a thing as a medium shot and a close-up. One. Like, you don't have to shoot it so flat. And also that would help with the fact that the set doesn't work. But then at the same time, the only bit of physical, you know, environment and set dressing you've got are these rocks and the grass. So then if you do shoot in close up, you just got a shit cyclorama behind people. So I can understand why you want to, because if you were on location, obviously you'd have wider shots because you'd show off the landscape.
Yeah, of course.
But there's no landscape to show off. So what are you doing, you know? Yeah, it's crazy. And you think as well, like, exterior sets earlier in that season, like Kinder looks so good because they've got money. They've got money to spend, but they just, terrible. So yeah, part 4 is, you know, when you said earlier,
right off.
like, oh, I think I'm skipping ahead. It's like, well, there's nothing else to fucking say, you know, really.
Part 3 is just those 4 arsing around in that sarcophagus, and then the 3 pilots pissing about with the TARDIS.
Now, the reason that is, I cannot believe this. I mean, I can. This part 3 was running under, right? So they had to add 7 minutes of additional material to make it run to time. How do you deliver a script and look at that page count and go, that looks a bit short? Like, it's 7 minutes worth of material isn't in the script. They had to fucking bodge it together. And so
I've only written 18 pages.
All that stuff with them, the pilots in the TARDIS, which actually, I have to say, I do like that stuff. With them treating the TARDIS console room as a flight deck and trying to work out the controls. I like that stuff.
Yeah.
But
nothing about it convinces me that they're pilots.
No, not at all. Apart from the fact they've got very plummy accents and are wearing uniforms, there's nothing else that makes you a pilot. There's one very good mustache, which is quite piloty, to be fair.
Yeah, and that's another thing. When that pilot is fixing the brake fluid on the wheels, would a pilot know how to do that?
I don't know. You must have to have a certain amount of. Well, I mean, you have to understand the aircraft inside and out, and I guess if you did crash land somewhere, you have to be able to get the plane to take off again.
You have to change the tyre on Concorde.
That was it. I was like, how is using air pressure from the fucking tyres going to allow you to take off? I don't understand how any of this stuff works. Is it to get enough air intake for the engines to kick? My dad will tell me. My dad will message me afterwards and say, well, the reason they did that was...
right. Why doesn't the TARDIS just take off and like put them in a bloody force field like in Delta and the Bannerman and just pull them off into bloody back into space?
It seems to me the only reason why Concorde, they have to get it back is because the BA are like, well, we've already lost one.
Pissed off. Yeah.
It's like, you know, that will sink the company. If we can't get these flights going to New York, we're going to be in big trouble. We've already put millions of billions into building these things. We can't build another one.
Yeah.
And then there's that whole bit where the Master's TARDIS is the other Concorde for a bit, and then it isn't, and then it becomes the Pillar again. And you know, I liked the image of the massive Concorde dematerializing and then rematerializing, but again, it's a model of Concorde that looks like something you bought or you get for free in the gift shop, and they come along and give you complimentary, BA bits. Fuck it. It just doesn't work. And then
it doesn't work.
You get to the end of the story, and the only kind of, bit of interest to talk about in the final part, besides the fact that it's finished, is Tegan's fake out farewell. Which is, an interesting thing to do. It gives the show a cliffhanger to end the series on, which is kind of interesting. And I don't think, Doctor Who never treated the last episode of each season as a finale, particularly, because I guess the money had run out. So they were like, well, we can't really do much. But to have a season-ending cliffhanger is really cool, and it's at least different for the show. So she's left behind at the end of the story. But how did he manage to leave her behind twice? Because the plotting for this always confused me. So the Doctor and Nyssa run into the TARDIS when 2 airport coppers turn up, and they're like, right, what are you doing here? Why is there a police box on the roof? They run in. Tegan's outside the TARDIS. She's just been talking to Nyssa, but the Doctor and Nyssa run into the TARDIS. Tegan's outside. We don't see Tegan Scarpa. Cut back to the TARDIS. They do some business in there. The Doctor asks where Tegan is, and then we cut to Tegan in the airport terminal, and then we cut back to the roof with the Doctor and Nyssa outside waiting for them to turn up, and then some other people come along and they're like, right, what's this business going on here? And the Doctor's obviously,
go off again.
And then they go off again, and it's like, but you came out to get Tegan, and you've gone back in without Tegan and taken off. And that's the end of the story.
Yeah.
And she runs up to the roof like, well, I thought I was going as well. And it's like, right, you know, it's like, fuck. It was so badly done.
It's so weird as well. And you're trying to tell me that Tegan doesn't turn around to Nyssa and say, oh, I'm just going to pop down to the duty free and get some fags.
Exactly.
I'll be back in a minute.
You know, do you want any perfume? I hear it's quite cheap.
Yeah.
You know, shit. I'm gonna get one of those missive Toblerones. Yeah, and it's so weird, and there's the way the season ends of her going like, I thought I was going off with him as well. It does make me feel like the Doctor's like, right, finally I've got Nyssa alone. You know, and that's it, and then they can begin their love story. Fuck. It's
I like
terrible.
the pilot turns around and is like, oh, hello. I thought you were going off with the Doctor. She should have turned around and said, did you not just live the last 4 weeks of this Doctor Who story?
If you just had to do the script I did, mate, you'd want to fuck off home as well, believe me. One thing I do really, really like, and I'd never noticed it before, and this is, you know, I don't want to make it seem like classic Doctor Who is sort of embryonic in its ability to, I don't know, do symbolism or foreshadowing, but when they arrive at the terminal in part 1, you can hear somebody on the tannoy say an Air Australia flight has been delayed, and then when Tegan is walking through the terminal at the end, you can hear the tannoy lady say, Air Australia flight is ready for departure. I thought,
clever.
That's really nice. That's a really cool... It's about the most sophisticated thing in this whole thing. You know, I thought, well done. That's a nice little bit of work there. But yeah, I think, have we reached our final thoughts? Do we want to give our final impressions or any other added bits?
I just wanted to point out a few good things, seeing as we've just totally shit all over this story.
Yeah.
I liked in part 1 the bit where the Doctor gets out of getting into trouble by mentioning unit
C19
and saying, "Oh, cool up." Yeah, that's really cool. Like that. We haven't really talked an awful lot about the guest cast outside of the pilots, who we just said were, you know, they're great. But the old Professor bloke, who's obviously in it for a lot of part 3. I like the sort of relationship he has with the Doctor, in as much as he's like this old professor who sees the Doctor, this young man with his crazy ideas, like, you know, his long hair, this hippie lunatic man. You know, I like that. Whereas then you've got Peter, who actually does a fairly good job of like acting like he's quite frustrated around this whole git, because he's like, you know, I may look young, but actually I'm far cleverer than you old bastard. So that, I like that dynamic. That's cool. Anything else?
I do get a bit, I guess it's because of how ethereal like the Xeraphim are and stuff, but when that old bloke turns up as another fucking Force ghost in the TARDIS to pilot it back, it's like, how the fuck do you know how to pilot the TARDIS? Like, you know,
I know, it's weird.
And I just find that shot of him hilarious, where the pilot's around the console and they look up and there's this fucking old bloke in the corner of the room looking very lost and confused, like fucking Grandpa Simpson's just walked in. It's great.
And he's cosplaying as Matt Smith as well.
He is. True. Foreshadowing.
And the only other takeaway from this, spoilers for people who haven't seen Indiana Jones 5, but the whole crux of Concorde flying through a time contour is part of the plot of Indiana Jones 5.
Is it?
Which is also shit, so I guess, you know, they took inspiration from the right place.
So this is a very flimsy story, very weakly executed, zero production value.
Yeah.
As we said, you can tell the cast are embarrassed to be a part of it. It just doesn't work on any level. Peter Davison says it was the biggest disappointment from his time on the show. He said, it was a very good story. I think that's not true. But we had run out of money. We filmed the prehistoric landscape of Heathrow Airport in Studio 8 with a model Concorde at the back of the studio. The monsters were bits of foam. We didn't do the story justice. And he said that they knew it was going to be a pile of crap, or look like a pile of crap, during rehearsals.
Well, he actually refers to that on the making of, at the end of the making of on the collection set. And he says, I previously said that it was well written or that it was a good story. He says, and honestly, he said, I don't even really think it was that either, to be honest. So he knows it was poo on all sides.
Part 1 marks the last time in the classic series that an episode would reach 10 million viewers besides the TV movie.
Wow.
And it wouldn't be bettered for another 23 years until Rose came about. I watched Peter Grimwade's Mythmakers, which was recorded about 5 years after Time Flight.
Oh, yeah.
So he's not as candid as you'd hope he would be. He's still sort of, I guess, still kind of working for the BBC. And when Nicholas Briggs mentions stuff, he's like, well, I don't want to bury another director or whatever it is. So, he's not being that giving with stuff. But Nicholas Briggs at one point says, can a good director save a bad script? As they're sort of starting to talk about his efforts of writing on the show. And there's a bit where he goes, it's very cringily plotted out, but he goes, do you write long form or do you use a word processor? And Peter Grimwade goes, I use a word processor. Would you like to see it? And Nick Briggs goes, yes, please. And they go up to his attic and chat about his word processor for about 5 minutes, which is very odd.
Lovely.
And then Nick insinuates that Peter wrote these grandiose scripts to get back at the director that was assigned to those stories, which is a bit of a fucking leap of logic. But he says he would have liked to have directed the episodes that he wrote. And he also says that there are stories that he has on tape that he hasn't watched, that he can't. And I think he's probably referring to Time Flight there, because Mordred Undead is fine. It's not going to set the world on fire, but it's fine. So
it's the best of the three.
It is the best of his three. And, it says something that, the cast can't hide their contempt for what they're having to do. Even after all these years, they still think it's terrible. And it is. There's very few redeeming qualities in it. I like the bit where the pilots by the sarcophagus and, the old people are trying to break it open. And Captain Stapley, I think his name is in like a bit of a hypnotic state, or his other guy is, and he snaps him out of it. He's sort of like getting there, but then he starts to succump to it, and Bilton starts doing like pre-flight checks, like,
that's all really cool.
Good. That stuff's really, that worked really well, I thought.
And the music under that as well. The music there, that sort of like, it's that sort of like hypnotic sound sort of, it's cleverly done. But not enough to save the story.
Not enough to save the story. I'm glad that we've done Time Flight though.
Yes, me too.
If only to get it out of the way.
Yes. We've done some of the worst Doctor Who's now.
We have. I mean, there's still plenty to come, don't worry. Actually, speaking of, let me consult the list of Rod and tell you what's coming up next, just to see if we. Oh, Celestial Toymaker is next.
Right.
So we haven't escaped all the shit ones.
No, but that's an interesting one. That'll be an interesting one.
It's an interesting one at least. Yes. Final thoughts, Matt. Final sign off.
It's poo, isn't it? And all the people on Twitter who said, it's not that bad, you're insane.
I know. I couldn't believe how many people were like, it's all right. It's not even all right. It's rubbish.
No, it's not. Yeah. I think I might enjoy the Twin Dilemma more than this.
The Twin
At least
Dilemma,
just for Colin Baker.
Yeah. Because Colin's
and Mestor, because at least his shit is,
exactly.
It's fun in parts.
There's something redeemable
and the plot,
about.
You can follow the plot.
You can follow the plot, and there's something redeemable about its lack of quality in the Twin Dilemma, that it's almost comical, whereas this is just bland. It's boring. There's too many elements that haven't been balanced out. The script editor doesn't care enough to fix those problems. So why should the actors engage in being entertaining? Why should we give a fuck at this point? It's the end of the series.
Well, that's it.
I've been paid.
Yeah. Oh, dear. Well, there we go. That was Time Flight, the finale of season 19, Peter's first series. What an ending, eh? Well, let us know in the comments what you think about Time Flight. Do you think we're being too harsh, or do you think we're right on the money? Otherwise, join us next time when we'll be talking about the Celestial Toy Maker, a missing story. We're going to have to watch the loose cannon reconstructions for this one. But of course, why are we watching this? Well, it might be because a certain character may or may not be appearing later in the year in Doctor Who. So we'll have to see. But, just wait until November when it turns out he's not the Celestial Toy Maker. And we just watch this for no freaking reason. Yeah. But yeah, join us then. And for now, farewell. Have a good fortnight. Bye.